Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photography chat live stream where we talk about photography and catch up as a community, see how everybody's doing. I'm doing well. I hope you guys are doing well. It's another cold winter day for us here in Maryland, but we'll get through it. And so I see a lot of questions as usual. I'd like the audience to drive the conversation. So if you have anything you want to talk about in particular or have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them here. And also I like to just catch up with some of the things I've been up to this week. Um, Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. It's been a slow week, photography wise. I didn't go out much. I think since last week, but we'll take a look. I my short-term memory is not very good. But that said, let's go ahead and get started. So I see Henning's here. Good morning, and good morning, Darko. Good to see you. And yeah, the weather's pretty crappy. We got like this rain, snowy mix going on over here, and it's gonna drop well below freezing tonight. Makes me cold thinking about it. Um, and the regular daily grind is putting a damper. Yeah, I know when you get into when you got all these other obligations, just life in general can interfere. But look at as it makes you look forward. I think more to when you have time to go out and do some photography. Uh, and I may have asked this in the past, but is there an easy setup for tabletop indoor photography you can suggest? Yes. I do it time to time for my my thumbnails and stuff for my product review videos. So I'll share with you how I do that. And has anyone tried diorama or toy photography? Uh, I haven't done toy photography. I maybe did it once, like with some model cars or something, but uh, it's an interesting. I've seen a lot of great work with it, where it's very, very difficult to tell if it's actually toy photography or if somebody had set up an entire scene. It's pretty impressive, but I never got into it myself. And what's a good scrim material for background and possible one for a light diffuser? Okay, I have some ideas on that. And thanks for giving us refuse in this crazy. I'm happy. It's a two-way street here. It's a great way for me to release also and talk to someone about photography, right? I mean, on the weekends, we go out with the photo club and stuff, but I can talk about photography every day, all day. um, and Jeff, good to see you. Roger, good to see you. Good morning. And greetings, Adam. Always good to see you. Erna, good to see you. And Scott Bourne had done a great dive into it right before he had to pull back from his face. Oh, I didn't know Scott was having health issues. I mean, I don't really know who he is exactly, but the name does sound familiar. And he pulled down all of his work. Oh, that's a shame. And Ernest says, do you know if some old OM lenses can roll continuously from manual focus while others have stopped points on the closest and farthest? I have the 25 1.8 and it's like that. Do you know why some OM lenses? It's really just a design choice, right? Typically, when they can roll continuously, it's focused by wire, so there's no physical connection to the lenses, and it's all controlled electronically. The ones with the hard stops typically have a physical heliocoil, well, basically gears to move the lenses inside, right? And so there's a hard stop because you don't want to overextend the lenses and damage something. And they set it so that it's usually minimum focus and uh, minimum focusing distance and infinity are usually the 2 points, and typically they go a little bit past each one because temperature can affect the minimum and maximum focusing points that may be preset at the factory or by design. So they design them to go a little bit further. So that's typically the reason. But there are still some lenses with hard stops that are still focused by wire. And Adam says, toy and diorama images can be great fun. Yeah, it is. It's great indoor photography too, projects, especially in the winter when it's cold. And ATR Bear, good to see you in New York. Man, New York is down to the bone cold. I haven't been to New York in probably 30 years, but I remember going there in the wintertime, and we were walking down the street with my girlfriend at the time, and I was not prepared for how cold it gets up there. And man, I was getting desperate, right? So I went over to one of the street vendors there, and they were selling these really fluffy giant earmuffs. I didn't care. I was like, I want the warmest earmuffs you got, man. And so I was wearing these like bright red fluffy earmuffs on my head. Never forget that. Adding action figures to the scene. Yeah, there's a lot of great work with action figures and things. And any OM lenses, 25 millimeters, you can recommend that have manual focus stopping points and a scale. Besides the 1.2. I can't think of any OM system autofocus lenses other than the 1.2. On the manual focus side, there are some like 7 Artisans lenses, I believe, or TT Artisans, or Per Gear. They have some 25s that have hard stops, but they're full manual focus. So that would probably be your only other option. And Thomas is here. Good to see you. It's 0 Celsius and overcast. Boy, it's warm over there compared to, well, let's see. Actually, I'm a little over 0. I'm at 39 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And Paul is here. Good to see you. Just came back from shooting birds and kite. It's probably summertime over there for you guys, right? In Australia. And Costa Rica. Good day. Good day, Willie. And Paul says, using DxO Photolab, I would like to add the area that AI detects. How do I add manually my section 2? Okay, I'll try and address that. I usually, when I have Photolab open already, when I do my editing streams, but okay, so a lot of questions here. I'm just almost caught up with the chat, then I'll get back to the questions. Good morning, the great Vanzini. Dry 27, yeah. We're supposed to get down to like 20 degrees tonight here, and then, by late afternoon even, and then 18 degrees the following. It's cold. And good morning, Alan. Good to see you. And also hit the like. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And Robert, good to see you. Hopefully we'll see you at the party tonight. Robert is a local photographer with me at the photo club. Marcia, good to see you. I'm sorry we didn't get together this past December. That's too bad. I remember you mentioned you were coming up from Florida. And good morning, David. Good to see you. And yeah, 40 Celsius. Man, that's like 80, 90 degrees, isn't it? Maybe 100? I don't know. I don't have a feel for Celsius, unfortunately. Okay, so let me go back up to the top. I think Darko had a question. Tabletop indoor photography. So really the biggest thing with tabletop is depending on how much room you have and what kind of props you have, right? And how big your scene is. So I'm working with a table that's looks like 36-inch by 24-inch, roughly. So 3 feet by, well, I can measure it, I guess. I, I have no sense of the, I just don't remember the actual table size. But this one's 39 or about 100 centimeters long, and it's 24 inches wide, or 60 centimeters. So let's go over to the tabletop and we'll talk about that. Because I was actually doing something for I got a product review coming. So let me clear. And then go to, where's my camera control? There we go. All right, so this is my basic tabletop setup. I was doing live comp. Let me see if I can turn off. So I was doing live comp. I need to move the camera just a little bit. Whoops, the other way. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. So this is my space. This is only about, I think, 14 inches in diameter. But you can see basically I have a lens and a camera here, a lens box and a camera. And then I have a little tabletop tripod. This is a different one. The one that I normally use, I have it in my camera bag over there because I take it out for doing macro. It's a little better one than this one, but this one's fine for indoor. But it's adjustable. So I can get different perspectives. You know, if I want a lower angle or taller angle, and it has some legs. If you guys watch my Tuesday shopping streams, you'll know I got this for like $15 or something. But anyway, and I was using the EM5 Mark III with the kit lens, doing live comp. And then I was using this flash to illuminate the subject, right? Now this here, I don't know what this is called exactly, but it's a very simple prop, right? That just two pieces of cardboard with an L bracket, and then there's a couple of clips here, and it comes with multiple backgrounds. So I can flip this around, and I have this pink, and I have like seven, eight different styles, you know, wood and whatever. Anyway, you do this, and you just kind of clip it. And I got this. This was on my deal page. It was on sale for like 10 bucks. But it's back up to $20. But anyhow, this is one way to do it. Now the challenge is I have to set my camera kind of far back, almost the full length of the table, and then zoom in to about 25, 30 millimeters so that I can compress the scene so that only what's inside the display here shows. Because if I get really close and use a wide angle, it's gonna show everything in the background because the wide angle is gonna go out. And then I just press, you know, I just compose my images. And I had to do a live composite, and I had to do two separate composites, one for the box and then one for the camera, and then I just layered them in Photoshop and blended them together, and I'll show you the final result. But while I was in live comp, I set it so that I got a black underexposed scene for the live composite, and then as the once I started the live comp, I could just shine the light exactly where I want it, just using this little flash. And I'll go ahead and show you the result. Where is oh, I gotta open up. I might have it here. Yeah, it's on this desk, this drive, under projects. Okay, so basically I took one image of the camera, and then I took a, where is it? Yeah, I messed up a couple of times. Oh, here it is. So I took an image of the box using live comp, and then I took an image of the camera, again, live comp, and then I blended them in Photoshop like this, and then I got this as the final edit image that I'm going to use for my thumbnail. It's pretty straightforward. And if you were doing, I don't know, toy photography, with action figures and things, they stand about this height. I guess it depends. But that's the general idea of how I do that kind of tabletop photography. There's other types of tabletop photography where sometimes you want to do flat lay, right? Because there's so many different kinds. So let's see. Let me try and see if I can show you this one. But what I have here is, I have a camera up here pointing down flat for the flat lay photography. And then sometimes I have an additional LED lighting over here that I have pointing up to the corner of the wall. So I get the ceiling and the wall bouncing light back in a nice soft fashion back onto the table. It'll shine back onto the table with a really nice soft light. So I can do it that way, or I can set up an umbrella on a light stand over here. Right now I have a tripod there, but sometimes I have a light stand with an umbrella if I'm going to use flash. And I might put one on the other side here, so I have very soft light on the table. And then for the tabletop, I have different color mats. Like under here I have a gray. I have gray, and then a texture, and then I have blue and red. So depending on what I want to do or what colors I want to use, I have a lot of different creative choices between this. Like I said, this thing comes with all kinds of, I got all kinds of different patterns here that I can use. So that's how I do it. The other thing I do sometimes is, let's see, I think it's in, let me get something. think it's right here. I haven't used this in a while. Oh, maybe it's in this box. Well, I honestly I haven't used it in a couple of years because I just do it this way now. But it's just basically a soft box. Let me see if I can find it for you. Um, so it's basically like, well, these have lights and everything in them, but that, you get one of these product light boxes like this. It's not the one I have. I have a very small one that folds up, sort of like my diffusers. But these aren't that expensive either, right? And they're just as good. But there's various versions of this. Some have the LED lighting built in with holes so that you can do flash. But the one that I have is all clear. Because there's a significant difference between the one I use and this one. Let me see. This is kind of like what I use, but not exactly. Let's see if this will point me to. Yeah, this is exactly what I use. It's one of these. It collapses down, into a small thing like this, but it expands out to about a 12 by 12. Well, this one's pretty big. This one's 32 by 32. The 32 by 32 just collapses in a little bigger, but it's flat and it's, you kind of twist and fold it to make it flat. This one here, instead of having the lights like the LED lighting and holes built in, you can put the flashes outside or lighting outside of this because it's translucent, and then you get a really really soft light onto your subject or whatever the product is. And there's various uh, tablecloths in here, so you can put like red on the bottom and then have soft light, things like that. Uh, this one's $40. I'm sure if you shop around or wait for a deal, you can get these a little cheaper. So that's the other way. And there's a little hole here in the front if you want to put a flash inside. What I used to do is um, I would have like the product here inside the light box, and then I would put the flash behind the product so you couldn't see it. And then the flash would bounce all inside of the light box, right, and give an extremely soft light. It wasn't directional, of course, because the light's coming from all directions. But the other option is if you want directional light, you'll put the flashes on either side or both sides, and then you get very soft light that way. But I found putting the flash inside the box gave me the best light because it would just bounce everything everywhere. And I didn't have to use as much flash power and um, uh, yeah, that was it. I didn't have to use as much flash power, so I could use a lower flash setting and get faster recycle and all of that. Okay, so that's how I do it for tabletop and stuff. So we got the top down, the light box, and the thingamajig. Let me figure out what that's called. Just go to my orders page here. Uh, it was this thing. I just got this the other day for 10 bucks. Um, Okay. So lots of different things. Then you can get creative from there, right? Okay. Let's see. That was a good question though. And it just happened. I was actually working on one right now, or yesterday I was working. What is a good scrim material for background possible? So if you buy that light box that's translucent, you don't really need a scrim, right? Because it basically you're putting everything inside of a scrim. For those who are not familiar, what a scrim is, it's basically just a flat panel that diffuses light. The cheapest way to do it, and I've done this before and it works well, is I just went to the dollar store and I bought the the frosty shower curtain that's translucent. So it's not clear, it's it's white, but it's translucent because it's just a frosty plastic sheet. And then I cut it up to the sizes that I need. So I can usually get 2 or 3 scrims out of for like $1, right? Or $1.25, whatever it is now. I think inflation has gone up. I've done that before, and then you just hang it using some clothesline clips onto whatever. Hang, set up 2 tripods and a broom, and just hang it that way. Uh, there's lots of ways to hang a sheet, right? Um, but that's the cheapest way. The other thing is you can buy curtains, sheer curtains, right? They're pretty cheap too. Um, here's 84-inch panel for $7. You get two 84-inch panels for like $6. So that's another way. Uh, these are a little bit too translucent sometimes. So uh, you have to double them up sometimes, like fold them over. So you'll have a 42-inch scrim instead of 84 inches. And that usually works pretty well. And then again, you might even have some curtain rods hanging around that you can prop up and hang, but I don't use scrims much. I'm just if I need to get soft light, I'll just point my flash to the corner of the ceiling or my LED lighting like I showed. You want to point it like behind me. I have 2 walls and a ceiling up here, right? So you have a nice big space. Not It's got to be white, obviously. The way mine is set up now, I wouldn't be able to do it on this side of the room. But on that side of the room, the walls are sort of an off-white. And then, I set the white balance best I can in camera using, white card or, I got a little fancy and got one of these, but uh, it's really critical you get the white balance right because there's so many things in this room that can throw the color off, and you want to make sure, so you have to set the white balance best you can uh, with whatever lighting setup you use. But if you're shooting directly through a light box or through a scrim, it's not quite as critical, the white balance. Usually it's good enough straight out of camera. Okay. And then let's see. Uh, so the 25 millimeters I answered. Oh, Photolab. All right. So question is, I would like to add to the area that AI detects. Oh, that's easy to do. Let me see. Let's see. I just added this image, but I didn't use AI for anything. This was I went out with some friends yesterday, and this was the dessert we had. Let me pull up the AI detect. So let's see. Give it a second. So AI detected that, right? So let's say I want to add this and this. So I can do it. I hit the shift key on my keyboard, then I just click on this here, and then I can hit the shift key here. And now you can see I have three masks, under one. So I have 3 submasks under this mask. The other thing I can do is I can add another submask by clicking here, right? So now I have a new submask, and then I can select a brush, and then I can just kind of just add a little bit like this with my brush if I wanted, or I can select this with my brush and then the front here. I'm just I'm not doing anything that makes sense. I'm just demonstrating the tool. And now whenever I make adjustments, right, it's doing it to all of the masks that I created all at once. If that makes so, hopefully that answers your question. Okay. And Anthony says, so if I missed your question at this point, and I haven't, because it's hard for me to go back up. I really think that more than ever that OM Systems introduced an all-new PenF style camera more than ever. It cannot be more expensive than an OM5 to be successful. Yeah, that's not going to happen. The only company that's really releasing cameras like crazy is Fujifilm, right? I mean, how many cameras did they have last year? A lot. It was like X-Half, XE5, plethora of, what do you call those things? Instax. So just OM System doesn't have the bandwidth for that. They're just not big enough to do that. They don't have, meaning they don't have the resources or the money to put all that R&D in and then take a risk, right? Because if it fails, they'll never recoup that. So they have to kind of stick with what their marketing is, their target goal, and that is sports and wildlife, right? And it seems like mostly wildlife, landscape type stuff. The OM3 was a little bit of a gamble for them, and hopefully it paid off. I hope that it's doing well for them. Right now it's on sale for $16.99. It's crazy, but they try to market it to do everything, right? Lifestyle, street photography, and they packed it with everything that the OM1 has so that it can do everything. And it is my everything camera. I use it for my birding. I use it for my street photography. I use it for everything. And just like I would an OM1, but this one is kind of stylish, right? It's more got that street photography type vibe. So for them to come out with a PenF and then it not do well, we'll see. But there's no way it's going to be priced like an OM5. They're not going to have an $1,100 PenF. I just don't see that happening. And 40 degrees is 104. Oh, man. That's hot, but it's dry, right? I think in Australia, I think. That's rough. And John follows. Good to see you. And that Micro Four, oh my God. How you doing? It's yeah, we're gonna do our annual meetup this year, so hopefully you can join us for that. Greetings from sunny Cyprus. I do watch often, but I've been lurking most of the last year after moving. Yeah, you moved. That was crazy. Okay, and then Leica recently brought out a rangefinder style camera that did not have a rangefinder. Instead, it has an EVF to cut costs. It's still a very expensive camera. Well, I guess it might be a cheaper camera, but I don't know if they made it to cut costs specifically. I just can't picture Leica saying we need to cut costs. I just don't see them saying that. I think they just created it specifically because they wanted to there must have been enough demand for them to make something like that. Um, but I don't think it's doing well. I have no idea. I have no idea. But I know which camera you're talking about. I've seen it mostly through like Chris Nichols type videos. When he talked about it, I don't think he liked it too much. I think he preferred just a regular rangefinder style. And Henning says half. I went birding this morning to a nearby lake. There was a little fog over the water. It turned out the OM1 Mark II and the 100 to 400, that ISO 4000 already brought in so much noise. Not controllable anymore. Even with DxO, as soon as the noise is not visible anymore, the image looks so unnaturally sharp and unusable. Have you experienced something like this? Okay. So there's, you know, because 100 to 400, yeah, anyway, you're at ISO 4000, right? And I've gotten great images, up to ISO 12,000. And to my eye, they don't look over sharpened, they don't look noisy, and there's a lot of detail. However, I've taken similar images at like ISO 400, 200, 800, like under 1,000, that look noisy and are hard to recover. So expose the subject properly, right? To the degree that you want it to be, uh, the exposure that you want. Because when I say exposure to the image properly, I don't want to imply that that means 18% gray, right? Because, the correct exposure is whatever you want it to be. And typically when an image is underexposed and too dark, and I suspect that's what's happening with this image you're talking about, when you try to recover and denoise it and raise the shadows, yeah, there's not much you can do. It's going to be noisy and grainy. Uh, and that's going to be true for any camera, not just the OM1 Mark II, but it's going to happen maybe to a lesser degree with some full frame cameras, but this is a consistent issue. So it's probably easier to, let me see if I can find some, I'm so good at culling now. I don't keep images that are underexposed or overexposed anymore. Let me just take a quick look. Didn't do anything there. I didn't do anything here. Well, there's a little bit here. What's the ISO on this one? ISO 6400. All right, let me go into this folder. This is not a bird. I was just doing some stuff. This folder, and let me find. Okay, there's a couple of good examples in here. I just need to get to the right. So this is ISO 25, 2000. Let me find one a little bit higher. 2000, 3200. All right, this is close enough. So this image here is ISO 3200, and this is underexposed. Because I dialed in -3 EV, and this might be part of a bracketed set, but anyway, if I try to raise the shadows, I mean, yeah, there's just going to be a lot of noise. And then let's apply denoising, okay? And now I've lost a lot of detail, right? I'm going to try and make this bigger so everybody can see. So let me make a virtual copy. And then I'm exaggerating a little bit my point here, okay? Because I'm sure your image wasn't this underexposed. But okay. So if you look at the image on the right, I feel like if you look at the fence here and the steps, there's actually some detail here, but it's just covered in noise, right? And then when I denoise it, this is what I get. Let me put the loop tool on it. And DxO does a pretty good job at recovering the details. Like, see, if you look at the fence, let me bring this down. If you look at the fence, that's not bad compared to, you know, what it was. That's the original image where I raised the exposure. And then this is the denoised image. But when you look at the original, let me turn off this loop. You know, the original image is just grossly underexposed. So this is kind of an exaggerated version. Now let me find another high ISO image where I do retain the detail. See, this image is at ISO 5000. Let me reset it. So this image is at ISO 5000, but it's exposed, maybe slightly overexposed, but this is exposed the way I wanted it. And you can see, like, particularly if you look in the sand and this, whatever this thing is, this statue thing, there's not nearly as much noise as there was, like there was even at a higher ISO than the other image. But you can see the noise starts to show up in the underexposed areas. And then if I just apply noise reduction, let me see. If I apply noise reduction, and I'll bring in the loop tool. Let's go down here to the sand. But yeah, it's a lot better. And then all I have to do is apply some sharpening and contrast. Let's see. Something like this. And now I've recovered a lot of great detail at ISO 5000. But if we compare it to the original, because I exposed this image much brighter, there's not as much noise and there's a lot more detail. So I hope that makes sense. So when you're shooting your bird at ISO 4000 and it's too dark and then you try to recover, you're going to get images like the steps and the fence that I showed the first time. But if you expose the subject, if it's the bird, properly, you know, bright enough, because birds, you know, when you get under the feathers, you know, and the body, you try to recover the shadows from those because the highlights on the head are much brighter. Yeah, you're going to be in trouble. So I hope that makes sense. Noise, basically, just the easiest way to think of it is noise hides in the shadows. And then when you try to recover those shadows at high ISOs, you're just going to get a mess. Okay. Uh, and entities, I would like to see an all-new Pen F style which does not have a rangefinder, instead has an EVF. To cut costs, I think they could sell such a camera the same price. I'm a little confused because the Pen F is a rangefinder style camera with an EVF. I would like to see an all-new Pen F styled. So Pen F style is rangefinder style, and it already has an EVF. And when that came out 10 years ago, it was like 1,200 bucks. Later, you know it's going to be 2,000 or more. Think about it. They just released the Ricoh GR monochrome. 20, what did they ask for that? $2,300? Um, okay. So I want to see OM System bring out a 24 megapixel fully stacked sensor this year with professional line of camera. They need to retire. Yeah, that's not happening either. That 20 megapixel sensor is going to be with us. I would even predict even in the OM1 Mark III is my prediction. I just don't see them changing sensors when it's just not ready. It's not ready. Uh, 'Cause I remember when the Pen F came out, it was the first 20 megapixel micro four thirds camera, at least for Olympus. But I think overall it was the first. And I remember the review that Chris Nichols did back when he was with Camera Store, I believe. And they're like, meh, you know what I mean? So we went from 16 megapixel to 20 megapixels. It was a Pen F rangefinder, gorgeous camera. It didn't sell well, right? Um, so why would OM Systems do it again? Is my my thinking, right? Uh, why would they come out with a Pen F with a 24 megapixel sensor and then something that's going to cost probably $2,500? I don't think anybody will buy it, to be honest. And the OM3 came out. I don't think having a higher megapixel sensor would have made any difference for it. Probably hurt it in some ways. But yeah, I think we're going to be stuck with 20 megapixel for at least another generation of cameras. So the OM5 Mark III, the OM1 Mark III, and maybe an OM10 if they ever come out with one. I think they should come out with an OM20. But I think we got at least another generation to go before they can move on from that sensor. And really, the only reason a lot of cameras are moving up in megapixels, I don't think it's because of photography, right? Because if you look at all the photography-based cameras, most of them are 24 megapixels, at least on the full frame side. And most of the Sony APS-C cameras, I think, are all 24 megapixels. For photography, it's no big deal. But I think a lot of companies, they have to raise the megapixels, not to check a box necessarily for photography, but for video. Because if you want to do 4K or 8K video, uh, 4K you can do with 20. But if you want to do 6.5 open gate, if you want to do 8K video open gate, you can't do that with a 20 megapixel sensor. You have to go to about 33 megapixels or more to get 8K. I remember Sharp, many years ago, it was a 40 megapixel sensor to do the 8K video. Uh, so OM Systems is not driven by video. Unlike Panasonic, Panasonic came out with a 25 megapixel sensor because they're very video focused. And to get the 6K or whatever video spec they needed to update to a 25 megapixel sensor. I don't think Panasonic updated the sensor for photography. They did it primarily for the video side. OM System is not video centric. So that's why I don't think we're going to see, we're just not going to, we're at least another generation. We're going to have at least another generation of 20 megapixel cameras. And move forward, even if it's 4 to 6 megapixel extra resolution over the current sensor. Yeah, it's not happening. I just don't see it, Anthony. I mean, I would love to see 4 more megapixels, but not at the expense of image quality, like reduced dynamic range, less color, everything that goes along with using smaller pixels in the same surface area. I would even be happy with a 16 megapixel sensor if I could get better low light performance. A 16 megapixel stack sensor with better low light, that would be a monster, in my opinion. And Barry's here. How's it going, Barry? Good to see you. And white bed sheets are very useful either for reflection or transmission. Yes, it is, translucent, right? But yeah, white bed sheet, if you have one, you can start with that, but you need a really strong light to be able to shoot through the sheet itself because they're very, very reflective. Adam says, have you ever had the opportunity to shoot something with a medium format sensor, Fuji maybe, and did you find anything compelling enough about it to wish you had the option in your lineup? I've only shot medium format like it shows, trade shows and things. I brought my own memory card, stuck it in the camera and snapped off a few. I get home and I look at them, but that's no way to make a decision, right? You really need to shoot with one for a little while and get a feel for it. I'm shopping now for medium format, just window shopping. I'm not serious about it because they're so freaking expensive. But they're, and I'm leaning towards the 50 megapixel medium formats versus say the 100 megapixel because I don't want that. I want to get as big a pixel as I can on a sensor. And every time I start looking at, I'll download the images from DP Review, the test charts and other things like that. Every time I do that and I process the images, I'm like, what am I really getting for, $3,000 to $8,000, depending on which camera I was thinking about. I was thinking about a Hasselblad, that's closer to the $8,000 mark with lenses and stuff, or closer to 3,000 for GFX 50, right? So you get the body and a lens. And I just, for the photography work that I do, I just couldn't see the real benefit of these large format cameras. If I'm trying to capture an image in a single shot, like Thomas Heaton uses what, the 100 megapixel Hasselblad, and he loves it, and his images are amazing. But he's doing like capturing one single shot. You never really hear about him, focus stacking. Maybe he has, but I never hear him talk about it, like taking multiple images of the scene for focus stacking purposes, for exposure bracketing, for, to get more dynamic range. He does that. So he switched from medium format to a Nikon full frame because he does focus stack sometimes, and he found he had to do it less with the Nikon because of the depth of field. And he's completely happy with that. Going from you know, the GFX, I forget which one he had. He probably had the 100 megapixel back to a 47 megapixel Nikon Z8. And he's completely happy with the resolution, the dynamic range, the depth of field. And particularly because of the lenses, he had more flexibility there. And I think that was what initially drove his purchase for the Nikon Z8 was the lens choice. But ultimately, image quality is going to be the deal breaker, right? Because if you got the lens that you want, but then you're not getting the image quality you had from the medium format, he might have switched back, right? Uh, and then when you think about the Nikon Z8 and I compare that to images that I can get with my OM3, for example, the gap is even smaller, right, than it is between an OM3 and a medium format. So I don't know. I'm just gonna have to. I mean, if they weren't so expensive, I could do it. It would be a stretch, but I could max out one of my credit cards and get one, right? And then take 2 or 3 years to pay it off, and you know how that goes, right? So yeah, the short answer is I haven't I haven't had the opportunity to shoot myself, but I've downloaded a lot of sample images, raw files, and compared them and processed them side by side with my OM3 and other cameras. And I'm like, I don't know if getting a medium format camera is going to solve or improve my photography at all. I mean, I don't want to just use the common cliche, you know, gear doesn't matter, etc. I mean, gear matters, right? To those of us that care about those things. Because we're not 100%, we're not always out there trying to be a photographer. We enjoy the technology itself and what it can do, right? Whether we can take a good picture or not, we really enjoy the photos that we get because of the technology. But uh, yeah, I'm still torn. I window shop the medium formats time to time. I'm leaning towards but I don't know. You know, because I can get one of those for about 22, 2300, and then you throw on a couple lenses used. You know, I'm closer to the $3,000 price point. I just don't see it doing anything for me. Oh, Great Vanzini is saying good morning. Let me get caught. Well, I'm a little bit behind here. Marco, good to see you. And let's see. Eric says waiting on Rico to release the GR4X line, though the GR4 monochrome looks enticing. I could still get the same effect with the Q3 aside from it being pocketable. It's not the same. You know, the way I watched Chris Nichols talk about the GR4 in the podcast and in the video, his preview. I really connect with his style of presentation and conversation about the cameras. Because there are better technical reviews. I think when Gordon Lane comes out with one, maybe he has, I'll watch his too. But I'm not seriously considering that camera because I have a Pentax monochrome, which uses basically the same sensor as the GR4 monochrome. You know, the small size compact weight is really attractive, but it doesn't have interchangeable lenses. I'd be a little bit amiss without being able to put on, you know, whatever lens I want. But I'm really happy with the Pentax monochrome. I did take some shots. Uh, I don't have a direct side-by-side comparison. Let me see if I have, let me see what's new since, because I was here on what, the 11th? I think I showed these already. Yeah, I showed these last week. But these are the straight out of camera JPEGs of the Pentax monochrome. You know, these are just gorgeous. just straight out of camera. I didn't, you know, these are the JPEGs. I didn't process these. Uh, didn't crop them, you know, just straight out of camera. I just love the images I get out of this camera for black and white. There's a certain tonality to this that I just don't see in a regular color sensor camera. Out my Canon or Nikon, both full frame, shooting those in black and white, and um, side by side with my Pentax monochrome, and just looking at the images side by side, you know, back on my computer, and seeing how if I can get the same tonality from those full frame cameras as I do my little Pentax, because the Canon is a 24 megapixel, that'd probably be the best one to do the comparison, because my Nikon is a 16. But what Chris Nichols talks about all the time when he says that why not just buy a full frame camera and shoot in black and white, you know, and get basically the same dynamic range as and same resolution, right? Because shooting with APS-C in monochrome, he said, you know, you get about a stop more dynamic range when you shoot in monochrome, when you shoot with a monochrome camera, and you get better resolution and details. So his argument is, why not just buy a full frame camera with, you know, say higher resolution, and it's going to have better dynamic range. So you get like a 33 megapixel full frame camera, so it's going to have more resolution, and it's going to have the same, if not better, dynamic range than the APS-C monochrome. But I think he's missing the straight out of camera tonality that you get with the black and white camera. And then when I go to edit the black and white image, it's just amazing. Let me show you. I'm going to export this image. Again, this is straight out of camera, no editing. Let me go to okay. Pictures. Okay, so the image on, oops, the image on the left is my final edit, right? So I cropped in a little bit and added some contrast. Versus the straight out of camera on the right. But you know, it's just amazing the working with a black and white image, and with work, it's hard to explain. But you get a certain tonality out of a monochrome sensor that you just cannot get. I should have. Let me see. This is the color one, but I didn't convert it to black and white, and it's a whole different image. But like this color image, you know, this is processed. Uh, and then converted to black and white. It's just not the same. I mean, this is a different lens field of view. But when I look at it, it's just not the same. I don't know if I can, let me save changes to that. And we'll put them side by side. I don't know. I mean, ultimately, Yeah, just use your Q3, right? Convert it to black and white, and you're probably 99.9% there, to be honest. As my Pentax monochrome, maybe even better than my Pentax monochrome. I don't know. That's why I wanted to test side by side my Canon with uh, the Pentax. Now I'm going to show you guys one more image that has convinced me anyway that a monochrome camera just rocks. Give me 1 second. I need to open up. This is the K3 3. Yep. Okay. I've showed this in a stream before. Wait. K3 monochrome. What happened to my flicker? If I click on this, it should take me. Let me do comparisons. I might have changed the name of the folder. Oh, here, K3 monochrome comparisons. So I did do some comparisons. Oh, it's Flickr. Flickr is just being mean today. I just can't open up any of these. How about my normal comparisons folder? All right, Flickr's down. And I'm signed in. Sorry about that. Flickr's not working right now. Now it's saying I have no public records. No public photos. Are you kidding me? I got thousands on there. All my albums are gone. I hope I didn't get hacked. I put a lot of work into that. Hopefully it's just a problem with Flickr and somebody didn't hack my Flickr account. Wow. Okay, maybe it's just a temporary thing. It seems to be working again. Hold on. Come on. Nope. That folder's working. I'm sorry. I know this is painful during a live stream. Okay, it's working now. All right, so these are comparisons against film. Here's one. So this is the Pen F monochrome, straight out of camera stuff. But you can see the tonality is very, very different. It's not just the exposure, because if you look at my jacket here and my shirt, these have the same exact luminance. The exposure is the same. I even put the exit data down here. So this one is just a hair brighter. But there's a huge difference in tonality here. Huge. Here's another one, Pen F versus the, and these have the exact same EXIF data. It's very subtle. Very subtle. This one's a little bit harder to tell because Ellie is just black and white anyway. And then if you want to look at the background, there's a depth of field issue. So it doesn't quite, it's not quite exactly the same. But anyway, my point is, I just feel like here's another one. It's just very different, the tonality. Like look at the water, the darker parts of the water, they're darker. But then if you look at the trees, the tree line is darker on the OM1, right? Or I'm sorry, the OM3. The tree line here is darker, okay? But then the water is different. It's darker here. I don't know. In a blind test, I'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between a monochrome OM3 and the K3 monochrome. It'd be really hard pressed to tell. But then there's times when I shoot images and I'm like, there's no way, like when I did that self-portrait, there's no way I can get that same exact look from my Pentax monochrome. I'm sorry, there's no way I can get the same look from my OM3 or Pen F as I did with the Pentax monochrome in the tonality. I'm not talking about the dynamic range, the extra stop, or any of the stuff that Chris Nickel always refers to say just buy a full frame camera and shoot monochrome. I'm talking about this tonality thing. So I'm going to shoot my Canon. I might even shoot the Nikon on top of that and compare that against, because, just because I just want to. That's all. Not that it's going to make any difference. I had one other image I could show you. Like this image, I shot this image with my A7R4, converted it to black and white, and there's some editing here. But I don't like this image, right? At least the tonalities and things that I'm getting out of it. And I tried to edit this to get it the way I want it to look. Same thing with this one. I'm not crazy about the tonality that I'm getting out of this. So what I might do is shoot my A7R5 side by side with my Pentax monochrome and see how different the images look, if any. But that's the problem. As soon as I try to do a blind test, I'm like, I don't know. Okay. Stuart is here. Good to see you. Regarding high ISO noise, regarding high ISO noise, it's not just the ISO, there are other parts of the triangle. Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, you're referring to aperture and shutter speed. But with birding, typically you're wide open all the time on your aperture, and your shutter speed is always going to be high, like 1/2000th of a second. So really the biggest variable, at least in the birding that I do, the biggest variable is really the ISO, going up and down and adjusting the ISO to get the exposure that I want for birding, because I'm always at 1/2000th or faster, and I'm always at wide open on the lens, f4 or f5.6. So the other parts of the triangle don't come into play when I'm doing birding. For other subjects, yeah, where I'm not forced to use a fast shutter speed, and I can choose an aperture, I can choose a shutter speed, and I can choose the ISO for more static still life type stuff. Yeah, that makes a big difference. Then the other factors come into play. And would you recommend the Panasonic 9mm as a wide-angle complement to my 12-100 to be used primarily for occasional landscapes and astro, or do you suggest something else? You know, depends on your budget and your preference, right? So I really like the wider. That 1 millimeters, it's not just 1 millimeters, between 8 to 9 millimeters. That 8 millimeter lens is wider than 8 millimeters. Uh, it's because I have a 7 millimeter lens from Panasonic. I have the 7 to 14, and my 8 millimeter is wider than the 7 millimeter. Okay, that aside, I think the 8 millimeter fisheye lens is superior to the 9 millimeter from Panalika. In a blind test, could I tell the difference? Probably not. But because I'm primarily recommending it over the Panalika because of its wider field of view. And that's more useful uh, when you're shooting wide. You want to be as wide as you can. And if you want the best optical quality, the 8 millimeter Pro from OM Systems is probably the best lens out there. That said, the 9 millimeter Leica, let's just say it gives you the same optical performance other than the field of view. But the other thing the Panalika does well is it's rectilinear, and you don't have to do any post-processing to correct, to get rid of that fisheye effect. The fisheye effect is pretty nominal. It's pretty minimal, but some people don't like it. To them, it's like it's unacceptable, right? They want a rectilinear image, and that's when I would say go ahead and get the 9 millimeter. You're not going to have as wide a field of view, but you won't have to do any post-processing corrections for the rectilinear image. So, and it's half the price, if not more, than the 8 millimeter fisheye. So, money no object, I would still recommend the 8 millimeter fisheye because you can easily correct it in post-processing. Lightroom and DxO both have profiles. You click a button, it's rectilinear. And it's going to be wider than the 9 millimeter Panasonic. The 9 millimeter Panasonic is half the price, and you don't have to worry about that at all. Because some people have trouble composing the image when they have this kind of distorted fisheye view. I don't have any issue with it because I can push a button, it'll show me the deep fisheye view through the EVF and the live view for composing. But yeah, so, but I have no trouble recommending either one. They're both excellent lenses. Just depends on your budget, really. If you want a little bit wider and you want the very best, I think the OM Pro is a better lens, but just as good, and it's rectilinear. And the Great Vanzini says, I try to embrace noise these days. Yeah. I don't. I still try to minimize it as much as possible. It's very rare I intentionally want noise straight out of camera. Oh, excuse me. Where did that come from? But uh, I know Robin Wong, uh, he doesn't worry about noise at all. He just keeps it in the image. He might reduce it a tiny bit, but yeah, he doesn't worry about it at all. Henning says, thanks for the explanation. I get that, but I as well knew that. I don't think the images are noteworthy underexposed. I will go do testing tomorrow. Okay, good. I think OM even said they had no plans to change from the 20 megapixels. Yeah, I don't know. They may have said it, but if they said that a long time ago, like 2 years ago, their opinion may have changed since then. Does Panasonic make their own sensors? I don't think so. Uh, I don't think so. I don't know. And 1080p is the new in thing. Okay, I haven't heard that, but I don't do that much video, ironically. And it says, my fear of OM not being willing to invest further into development, new cutting edge image processor, and higher resolution sensors, that this will remain the end of OM Systems as a company. Um, I think they should definitely invest more in the processor, but I don't think they have much control over the sensor, right? They just buy off the shelf sensors from Sony, like a lot of companies. So, it's not a matter of investing in sensor technology. It's just a matter of if it's going to be available. Uh, Now that said, let's say Sony has, I think they have the 40 megapixel micro four thirds sensor off the shelf. But what does it cost and how quickly can they manufacture something like that, right? And assuming they have the capacity to manufacture all that home systems would ever need, because how many cameras do they really sell? But still tens of thousands, if not 100,000. I don't know what their numbers are. I think they sold a couple 100,000 cameras total worldwide. Sony would have to be able to provide 10, 20, 30,000 processors, right? And that's going to cost a certain amount of money. And maybe OM systems just can't afford that, right? On top of that, they'd have to do R&D on the processing for that sensor, and then the entire motherboard. It's a big deal. And just keep in mind that people like to think that a lot of the processor sensor technology and silicon technology in general, because it's all silicon, right? We get these leaps every 3 to 4 years, whatever that Moore's law rule is. But really, it's more like 10 to 20 years between technology gaps. I mean, if you look at our processor now, uh, that's technology that was probably being developed 20 years ago. And only now has it been able to be actually mass produced in a way that you can put it into a consumer product. I'm not saying it was ready 20 years ago, but I was watching some video and they were talking about silicon processing and technology and stuff. Not just one video, but I watched a lot. I've watched a lot of these videos over the years. But it's one thing to have the prototype and the sensor and the technology ready to being able to go into mass production. There was one processor that it was an amazing technology, right? That we now have in the Intel and NVIDIA processing chips have now. But they were developing that technology 20 years ago, and they had the technology to do what we are using now that we consider brand new. But the problem was being able to manufacture this at a rate that would be useful to NVIDIA and Intel to sell these kinds of chips. Because they're like, if you can't produce, 100 chips an hour, whatever that number is, we can't use it. We need at least 100 chips an hour for us to be able to invest into this. And, that, like I said, that was 20 years ago. And then once they met that milestone, uh, then Intel said, okay, we'll invest more into your technology. And then now the needs are we need to mass produce 500 chips an hour, right? And we need to build the manufacturing or the machines to be able to produce, 500 chips an hour. So that's another millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars just to build the machine. And the machine took years to make, right? They don't just pop that thing up in a year or two, right? Uh, but yeah, I can't remember which video it was. But the most recent one I watched, they were saying, yeah, it takes like 10 to 20 years before the technology that was designed and developed goes into mass production. So the technology that we have today in our cameras and our cell phones and our computers, this was technology that was developed 12 years ago. It even got to the point that when they develop a technology, they're already thinking about the next generation, right? They said because by the time we get this into production, it's going to be outdated. So we're not even going to build the first generation. We're just going to start with the second generation of this chip because we're not going to waste money on the first generation. So they developed the first generation chip that got everybody interested in investing and producing and the manufacturing process, the fabrication. And that's why there's not too many fabrication companies out there making chips. You have to buy from Sony pretty much. I think Toshiba has some fabrication plants, but there's not that many out there that can produce the kind of technology you need to make a camera sensor. So when we talk about the going from a 20 megapixel to 24 megapixels, yeah, it's not a small thing. It's not a small thing to ask for that. Anyway, is the G92 Penny a good wildlife camera? Well, Micro Four Nerds, Emily there, did a really good comparison between the OM1, which I think is an excellent wildlife camera, versus the G9 Mark II. And the bottom line was they're both great cameras, but she would give the OM1 an edge over subsequent videos. Because the initial one, she was like, you're fine either way. But in subsequent videos that she's made about the OM1 with various lenses that she tried out, she said that I think her impression was that the OM1's a better camera for sports action wildlife. The autofocus is better, faster. There's no buffering like you get on a G9 II in the sense that, you have to wait for the buffer to clear before you can start again. There's some workflow issues too, but the OM1 is a little better. So I would encourage you to watch her videos because she has hands-on experience with both camera systems with multiple lenses, and I think she did a good job from the videos that I saw. And so I'm very concerned, especially after investing a lot of money into new lenses such as the excellent 12 to 100, 150 to 600, and several other lenses that have accumulated. Yeah, I'm just in a different position than some people, than some of you, like including you, in the sense that if they go out of business tomorrow, I'm fine. You know, I can use the cameras and gear that I have for a long time. If I need to get new gear, I'll just go on the used market. That's where I'm at, right? But some people are like, no, I need continued support. I need, if I buy a new lens and some new technology comes out, I want OM Systems to be right there with me to take advantage of whatever new technologies come out. Better autofocus, better optics, whatever. You want OM Systems to be there with you along your journey now and in the future, right? And then there are those that rely on a company professionally, right? If they're out in the field and their camera breaks, they need to be able to send it in, get a replacement very quickly. I don't know what professional services OM System offers, but there, it used to be, and it probably still is, with many of the camera manufacturers that have professional level services, where if your camera breaks down, you can get a replacement pretty quickly while your camera's getting repaired. There's a little lag time, right? The turnaround because of mailing it back and forth. But so there's multiple levels here. There's people like me that love the system, very enthusiastic about the system, wanted to continue to survive and grow and be part of my photography journey. But I'm totally fine if it's not. There's a lot of other camera systems out there if I need to switch. And the life of my lifetime, for my lifetime, it doesn't matter if they're around or not. In the short term, I can, like I said, I can rely on the used camera market for what I need. There's another group, I think, more like where you're at is you want OM System to thrive and be with you on your journey and have all these improvements along the way so that you guys grow together, both in terms of technology and in your photography. Uh, and then there's the professionals. So I, I can understand your concern, right? And personally, my gut feeling is they're fine. They are released. They released the OM5 Mark II, the OM3 last year, and the 50 to 200, in 2025. So that's three things right there. And that's pretty good, even though I get it. It's just recycled technology, right? The OM3 is an OM1, but it's been retooled and you know, uh, miniaturized slightly to the OM3. The OM5 Mark II is basically uh, just a minor update, couple of tweaks and a fancy color, right? The sand beige, really bad marketing on the color name. But really cool little camera. I was thinking about getting one again. I have no need for it, but I was thinking about getting one. But they're hard to find now, the sand beige color. And then the 50 to 200, which is an amazing lens, which again was probably in OM Systems, lineup of lenses, so that it would have been released either way. It's just OM Systems. It just got released under the OM Systems name, but it's the same people probably working on it. So I, I don't have the same sense of anxiety as other people because of where I'm at in my photography and how I feel about cameras. But I understand where you're coming from, and I would love for them to thrive and be with me the rest of my life, and then we can grow together, like I said, in our photography and in the technology. That would be wonderful. So I totally appreciate where you're coming from. Uh, Marcus says OM System is more profitable than Olympus Imaging Division, have the best photography camera in the Micro Four Thirds systems, and will remain leaders in weather station lens design. Yep, I agree with that. And cut it out with all the doom and gloom. Well, I don't think he's being pessimistic. I just think he's just has a little anxiety. He's a little bit concerned. Uh, so it's okay, you know. Doom and gloom would be, yeah, they're gonna die and go out of business, and I know Anthony touched on that a little bit, but I can appreciate somebody's anxiety when they've invested a lot of money in a system and they want it, they just love it so much they want it to be around for a long time. Uh, but I look at it, what are the consequences of them going out of business? It's pretty nominal in my situation, right? My photography is not going to stop. Uh, but I really hope that's not the case, and I don't think it is. And I'm going to do everything in my power to promote the system, not because I get paid or anything by them, right? But because I really enjoy photography, and I feel like the Micro Four Thirds offers really the most enjoyable experience with photography. Of all the camera systems I've used and owned, nothing has satisfied me more in the field than my OM systems and Olympus cameras. You know, I loathe, I don't loathe, I don't enjoy using the Sony or the Canon or the Nikon. I like to use them for what they are, but because they're a very different experience, especially the DSLRs. I go out and I enjoy photography, but when I take out any of my OM system and Olympus cameras, I am I'm just totally zen. I'm there and the camera's there with me. We're almost as one. I don't have to think about the camera at all. The camera and I think together kind of in a way. I don't know how, we just kind of become one. an extension of my arm, extension of my imagination, and the workflow and the kind of images that I get from it, I really enjoy. Whereas, the other camera systems, say for the Pentax monochrome, I really enjoy the image quality, or the images I get from that I really enjoy. But the other things, my A7R5, my Canon R8, my Nikon DF, what else? All these other cameras I have behind me, I enjoy them because I enjoy photography, but there's something different with OM systems than Olympus for me. Uh, and I'm just a big fan. What would the new OM2 look like, Rob? What would its differentiating features look like from your thought process? I'm not sure I understand the question. Um, the OM1, the OM2, I assume you mean the OM1 Mark. Oh, the OM20. I think you meant the OM20, right? This would be a $500 or $600 camera. Okay. I don't know if they can still do that, but when I thought about this idea a year ago, I was like, this needs to be a $500 or $600 camera that is basically can do everything the OM1 can do. But it's not weather sealed. Maybe it's plastic body. It's not weather sealed. And is handicapped in a lot of ways. Like, it doesn't have a 200 frame buffer. Maybe it has a 50 frame buffer, right? It doesn't have every single subject detected. It has, people and birds, or people and animals. And, maybe it doesn't have the grad ND, but it has the regular ND. So it's going to be crippled a little bit, not intentionally, uh, but I think because of if to meet the price point, they're going to have to make the camera smaller, use less expensive parts, and uh, in that there's going to be compromises in how much you can stuff into it, right? Like, I think one of the compromises, possibly to the OM3, is the buffer is only like 80 some frames, right? Which is a tiny bit less, like 5 frames less than my OM1 Mark 1, and over 100 frames less than the OM1 Mark 2. So to make this camera smaller, did they compromise adding a couple extra chips on the board, for that extra buffer? I don't know. Maybe. But there were compromises here. This also doesn't have the same IBIS capabilities, the OM1 and the OM1 Mark II. It's like a stop less than those two cameras. So they definitely had to use a more compact, less robust image stabilization system in the OM3. Doesn't affect my photography at all. But so there are real compromises here, I think, primarily because they had to make it smaller and less expensive. That's just two off the top of my head, right? That I can try to, hopefully that's an educated guess on what two of the compromises. The EVF, also a compromise, right? It's only 2 megapixels instead of 5. There's another one, single card slot, another one. All these compromises are made to bring the cost down and to make it more compact. And I think that's partially why the battery life feels like it's a little better than it is in the OM1 Mark 1 that I have. I feel like I get really better battery life overall. So an OM20 in my mind is something like that. It's going to be basically all of the core technologies of the OM1, phase detect autofocus, the same 20 megapixel stack sensor, but maybe a little bit crippled on some of the other things, buffer, subject detect features, EVF. no weather sealing, etc., etc. Can they do it? That's a tough call. Fuji can't do it, right? What did they come out with, an X half? And that was originally $800. Maybe it still is. They came out with the XE5. They actually raised the price on that, so it's more than an XT50. That didn't used to be the case. The XE series was usually the entry level. And they completely eliminated their X100, not X100, I think it was the X. They had these little plastic cameras that didn't use the X-trans sensor. What did they call those things? The XA? The XA series, maybe it was called. Those are gone. It didn't work for them. But OM Systems doesn't have a million cameras on the shelf. They got an OM5, OM3, OM1, right? EM10 doesn't count in my opinion. That thing is like 100 years old. But they need an OM10 at the very least, okay? They're going to make it $800 or more. And it can't just be a USB-C port. That would suck. If they come out with an OM10 and all they did was add a USB-C port like they did with the EM5 Mark III to the OM5. The OM5 actually is a pretty good upgrade from the EM5 Mark III, in my opinion. On paper, it doesn't look like anything than a USB-C port, but when you use the camera, it's actually a little snappier, better performance overall than the EM5 Mark III, particularly with the face detect autofocus is much better in the OM5 than it ever was in the EM5 Mark III. That said, the OM10 needs to be at the very least, it needs to be as good as the OM5 Mark II, just not weather sealed, I think. Otherwise, yeah, they're going to get a lot of flack for just adding USB-C port. It's why I still have the TG7, or I'm sorry, TG5, and haven't bought the TG7. Because all I'm really getting, there's a couple other minor things, but the only thing I'd be getting is a USB-C port. So I know I didn't bother upgrading to TG6 because it was a very, very minor update there. And the TG7, they had a USB-C port, a couple other minor things. I'm looking forward to a TG8. Hopefully they can do something substantial there. "20 megapixel Nikon APS-C Z50 series and a D500 is plenty. I have the Z52 and the D500, but would like a 33 megapixel upgrade." Yeah, I mean, look at the Nikon Z30, right? So on the OM20, going back to that, to cut the cost down to $500, get rid of the EVF. It's okay. Just make it a flippy screen, you know? So get rid of the EVF, do some other things, because Nikon is selling the Nikon Z30 for like $600 or $700. So an OM20 should be $500 or $600. And oops, sorry. And Rob, a Z8 would rock. Wish I could do one, but my Z7 original is still doing everything I need in tandem with the Z52. And I think arguably you might be getting better image quality with the Z7 because it's not a stack sensor and it has a shutter. So yeah, I don't see any reason to go from a Z7 to a Z8. And he says, "My fear is if they do not move forward with new hardware inside their Pro series of cameras, they'll just end up folding, not being competitive enough because late sales are too low." Possibly. I don't, like I said, I don't think the technology is going to, I've said this many times, adding megapixels and new technology, I don't think that's going to cut it. you know. Uh, they they need to get they really need to work on the computational side, and of course that's going to require new processors, so new technology. So on that side, they definitely need more processing power in the camera, even if it sacrifices battery life. Uh, they, because the answer is just carry a couple extra spare batteries. They're small, easy to carry, but there's no substitute for the processor. You have to put in a more powerful processor, lean into the computational features so that they are very snappy, figure out a way to combine computational features like combine HDR with high-res shot mode or combine focus stacking with high-res shot mode, so I don't have to do it manually. Right now, if I want to do HDR with high-res shot mode, I do it manually. If I want to do high-res shot mode with focus stacking, I'd have to do it manually. That's something that Ethan does. I don't, I would, but to do that, they need a lot more processing power. And I would take that at the expense of uh, battery life. And then on top of that, if they do add more megapixels, they're going to have to up their video game quite a bit. Like right now, why can't the current 20 megapixel sensor do 4K 120, right? I'm pretty sure it only goes to 4K 60, if I recall. I do so little video, I can't remember. So 4K, yeah, 4K 60, right? The sensor is capable of 4K 120, right? When you look at the specs on Sony's website for the sensor they're using in that camera, it'll do 4K 120. But I imagine the processing power and or the research and development in OEM systems, they don't care about video, that much, right? Or they don't have enough resources to invest to make the video all it can be. It's funny, I can see the connection between your style and Chris Nichols, conversational, accessible, practical. Yeah, maybe. And Pentax is still around with DSLR. Let's go of fear, support your preferred brand, and go out and take pictures. Yep. And would love if you got Mike Lane on the meetup this year. Really likable guy. Okay. I'm not sure who he is. I don't watch too many camera video reviews anymore when I'm on YouTube. I mean, I caught Maddie's video the other day talking about some changes for next year, or for this year. But I totally agree with, go out and enjoy and show enthusiasm for the system that you're using, and that will spread, right? Uh, your enthusiasm will spread to others. I can tell you that right in my own photography club with David, David's club, a lot of people are in Olympus and OM systems because of us, right? Because David shoots OM systems and Olympus. I shoot OM systems and Olympus. And then I know 2 people, 3 people that bought OM systems. And if it wasn't for, I think, the enthusiasm, they switched while I was a member there, right? I'm still a member, but while I was there, they switched from their Canon or Nikon, whatever they were shooting, to OM systems and Olympus. Uh, and I seriously doubt that would have happened if it wasn't for the enthusiasm that David and I have for the Olympus and OM systems cameras, you know? Um, and that's how I think ultimately, OM systems is going to succeed, is they really need to connect with their users and show their enthusiasm for the system. Uh, I mean, I think they're doing a lot because they do a lot of live streaming and they send their cameras out to everybody to review except me. But they send their cameras and lenses out to everybody to review and try. And the feedback when people try these cameras have been generally positive, right? I mean, I do catch those videos time to time, and just because I want to see what their impression is, right? Knowing what the system is, and generally speaking, is very positive. You know, they point out the obvious compromises when you go to a smaller system, but then they also point out the huge advantages of the system because too many people, compare because there's a lot of people that don't try the system, right? They just look at the specs. This OM3 is actually bigger than my A7C or whatever, right? I'm not sure if it is or isn't, but I'm just for example, this OM3 is bigger than an A7CR. Why would I buy an OM3 for the smaller size and weight when it's not, right? I hear that a lot. But it's when you start adding on the lenses in the system, I can go out with a small bag, no problem. That's why I got this really small bag that I can still use to this day because I shoot OM Systems Olympus cameras. When I switched over to my Nikon DSLR system, years ago, man, I had to start getting bigger bags, and then I had to get bags that would just carry the lens itself. I got this giant honking bag just for the lens. And then I had the bag to carry a couple other lenses and the camera. If I could fit it. Sometimes I'd have the, camera over my neck. I'd have this big giant bag with the lenses in it. Then I'd have a separate, like, bag just for the telephoto lens, you know? Uh, but with Micro Four Thirds, my God, I just go out 75 to 300 and 12 to 45. I'm done. I can do 99% of my photography with those two lenses. But if I want, I can throw in the 17 to 25 to 45 and the 75 and still have a little bag, right? Or I can get my 60 macro and drop that on there and a little IT32 flash or whatever, V480 flash. I can pack so many things in and do so many things at one time or in one trip with just one little bag. And I could never do that with my Nikon DSLR system. You can't even do that with even the Canon and Sony mirrorlesses. The lenses are going to be huge. Uh, and I get it. I get all of the the compromises that come with depth of field and uh, the extra one or two stops, probably two stops of low light performance that a full frame system can give you. But just stop underexposing your images by two stops. You'll be fine. You know what I mean? I get it. You want to recover shadows, you want to save a picture that you messed up on, but just stop messing up. Just expose your images properly, and you don't need to worry about that extra two stops of low light performance, right? And if you are shooting at night all the time, yeah, then maybe get a full frame camera like a 24 megapixel Z5 or whatchamacallit, R8. But even then, the images aren't that aren't that much better in low light. You still have to get a fast lens. You need a 2.8 lens at night or a 1.8 prime at night. If even if you're using a full frame camera. I was going to show you something. When was the last time I shot that R8? I feel like I just shot with the R8. It was last year, but that last year was just a little while ago. And I did this event. Where is it? What is, no, that was the Sony. I think it was this one. Okay, did I do anything high ISO here? What is this? ISO. I have to pick an image without a person in it. This one's ISO 8000. Okay, here's an unprocessed ISO 8000 image, right? In the parts that are exposed properly, you know, there's hardly any noise in here. But then when you get into the shadows, you know, there's plenty of noise, right? But still, for 8000 ISO, this is going to clean up really nice. And then, let me set this as a reference. Let me see if I can find, because this was a job, so I can't. They asked me not to share the pictures of them. Like, fine. Do I have any pictures of not people? Oh, here's one. This one was, oh, that was at ISO 200 because I was using flash. No, that's because I had an f1.2 lens. Wow. Well, anyway, this image here, this is my Micro Four Thirds. I was shooting at f1.2, ISO 200. But my point is, okay, this is my, all right, this is a good example. Where's my Canon? Oh, it's here. Okay. All right. It's this lens. Okay, so all right, so this is the exact, whoops. This is the exact setup. I was using this Canon with this lens, and then the OM3 with this lens, a 50mm f1.2. And you can see, my God, how much smaller. They weigh about the same, because this lens is like 500 grams. It's not light, but it's not that big, right? And this is a zoom lens, 24-105. But I'm able to carry an f1.2 lens and shoot at ISO 200, whereas this Canon, the Canon was at it was probably at f8 because it's a kit zoom lens. But you can see how clean that is versus, that's not bad, 8000. But that's what I mean. I can go out with a Micro Four Thirds system with much smaller lenses overall and get, you know, get the same kind of images, right? At even much lower ISOs. Okay, Rob, on Threads, do you post there specifically, or does it migrates there? I never go on to Threads. It's just I didn't even realize, you know, that it was still doing that. I haven't been on Threads in months and months. I think almost a year since I've even looked at my Threads. And for me, the weight, size, and money for full frame pretty much makes it a no-go. Yeah, you can. The full frame's not that much more expensive. I mean, you can get you get a Canon R8 for 1500 with a kit lens for about 2200, right? And you can get an OM3 with a kit lens for about the same price. Now, granted, I think the OM3 is a much better camera, right? Fully weather sealed, amazing, amazing camera. But uh, oh, there's a post here also. I need to turn that off. But yeah, I haven't been on Threads. I don't get the point of Threads. I just want to share pictures. And my Z7 in black and white are great, but I agree tonality and a dedicated monochrome sensor is better. It feels like it, yeah, it feels like it. Although the Silver Effects Nick really helps the editing of black and white. Yeah, Silver Effects though gives you all that drama, right? You can make them very dramatic or you can make it very low contrast. It's pretty heavy editing process. I enjoy it though. I use it time to time, mostly for my HDR. And Don Gum would be another great choice for the meetup. Yes. Um, I think Don Gum would be more of a one-on-one type guy though, right? Uh, because he doesn't have quite the presence, I think, of the other guests I'm thinking about inviting. And I'm not putting him down at all. He's a terrific guy, and I enjoyed his videos. I used to, like when I was watching more camera videos, I really enjoyed his videos. But I would love to get him on one-on-one. I've been thinking about that. Yeah. Did anyone see the news article that MIT and University of Maryland are working on a quantum camera for Astra that it's not limited by lens diffraction? Works at the proton level. I haven't heard about that. Let's see. Interesting though. Flickr has been a bit flaky of late, locked both me and my friend out of our accounts. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, I get the occasional, like, it wouldn't upload my images and then I would just try again later, but I've never had it, like, just tell me I have no pictures on my account. As much as I would like to see a replacement for the EM1X, I do not think they'll ever bring it out again. It would be nice to see an all-new OM1X introducing all-new hardware inside. Yeah, like I said, I just don't think they have the bandwidth right now. I mean, they'll come out with a Pen F before they come out with an OM1X. I'm pretty sure of that. Surely, if you want to compare a true monochrome sensor to a color sensor set to monochrome, you need to use the same. Ah, that's true. So I can use the. Oh, let's see. I don't have any because the Pentax and oh, I could do that. I could adapt the Pentax lens to the Canon R8 because the Canon R8 is mirrorless. I'm just not sure I have an adapter. I might. I might have a Pentax to Canon RF adapter. If not, I can get one. They're only like 20 bucks, right? I'll have to shop for one on Tuesday on my shopping day. That's a good point though, because lenses can definitely make a difference. I mean, I think most modern lenses are pretty much the same. You know, they're all trying to reproduce an accurate color, but there's still differences. Uh, Definitely. I'm trying to think because definitely the Canon. I think it would be okay. The Canon 50 millimeter 1.8 is a pretty much a vintage lens. It's just repackaged into an RF mount. Uh, that would be my lens choice for that. And then I would use the 35 on my Pentax. But that is the Pentax Limited Series lens. not on, that's not vintage at all. It's an excellent lens. Hmm. I have to give some thought to that. Because even if I adapt, yeah, that's tough to do. Because if I adapt the lens to my Pentax, it's going to have, because of the crop factor, I'm not going to get the same composition. Hmm. I'll try and make it as equal as possible, though. Whatever I do, I'll try and make it as equal as possible because there's a lot of variables there that I don't know if I can eliminate. Is anyone seeing audio sync issues? Oh, that's a good question. So Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. That's my test when I do audio syncing, as I say that. So the Gray Vanzini says perfectly in sync. And I just fear OM System not willing to move forward with research and development. It concerns me that the company might be on the way out. I don't think so. Uh, I'm not sure what gives you the impression that they're not willing to move forward. I mean, they're just not releasing cameras at a pace that other companies can do. But I don't think that's a matter of will, right? They're just taking a little longer. In 2026, OM Systems need to do something to boost confidence in the camera and lens company if they care about their customers who invest heavily. Well, there's a certain irony in that statement because if I recall, you were making these same sort of you're addressing the same concerns you had before you bought your all-in-one and 150 to 600 and other lenses, right? But then when you bought into it, you're extremely happy with the system and everything that it can do for you. So um, I think, yeah, I think a little bit ironic because now we're in 2026 and you still have this same anxiety. Uh, I would look at it like, I bought all this gear and system. I'm so happy and love it. Like I said, you need to kind of spread that enthusiasm of the system as it is. And I think that will spread just like it has in my immediate circle of friends and other photographers. A lot of people have switched to OM systems. And when they come to me and ask me what camera system should I get, I look at what they're shooting currently. Uh, and then, I try and take in everything and try to give them the best advice. But there's a lot of times I can tell them, yeah, you should get an OM system camera. Uh, Not everyone switches, right? Some people they stay with their Canon, man. They ain't budging from that. I had one friend, I could not, because she was prime. She had like a Canon R, not an R. Anyway, she had a Canon APS-C and one or two lenses, and she didn't want to sell that, right? She wanted to keep it as her beater camera, like camera she can take out and just. But it was a different mount. It was the old Canon EF mount, and she was ready to move on to mirrorless. So I'm like, all right, you should get, you know, and she was complaining. I've talked about her before. She's complaining about the weight of her current Canon APS-C camera and lenses. Anyway, she ended up buying an R5 Mark II and big lenses. And her wrist is like, she's like, oh, God, my wrist is so tired after shooting for a while, you know? Because we're not just shooting like this all the time, right? Sometimes we're standing there for a good 20, 30 minutes in one spot, trying to get the right, you know what I mean, hand holding. That's what she was doing this one time, and her wrist was, but for the generally what I'm saying is, my enthusiasm for the system, as well as David's and other people in the group now that have OM systems, they really love the system and that enthusiasm spreads, and then other people end up buying the system. There was a day I went out one day. This was last year, and there's a few people I'd never seen again, but there was like two or three other people that came to the event. They all had OM system cameras, two out of three, right? Um, and like I said, I know at least two or three people that I've influenced directly to get into OM systems. There's another person that definitely, because when he came out, he originally bought the OM system because he was a Nikon. He has a Z6 Mark II, I believe, with their popular telephoto lens, whatever that is, 200 to 600, whatever it is. It's popular lens for Nikon. Maybe it's the 180 to 600, but anyway, uh, he bought an OM1 with a 60 millimeter lens for like $1,000. He got a good deal because he wanted to do macro. And he said, I can buy the camera and lens and try a new system for the price of what the macro lens at Nikon costs all by itself. So he got the OM1, and everybody online, all the YouTube videos online, a lot of people use macro, OM systems for macro, right? And now he's all in. He is all in. He bought the 300 f4. Anyway, he bought 5 or 6 lenses, like awesome lenses. Because when he had the OM1, I says, hey, you want to borrow my 300 f4 and try it for this birding? And because he brought his Nikon with the 180 to 600. I said, here, try this. So I had the 300 with the 1.4. He said, oh, okay, thanks. And he tried it out. And because I have this enthusiasm and my willingness to help him, I think that had a big impact on his decision to switch over from a Nikon Z6 II to the OM systems. Now he has 2 OM cameras. He has 2 cameras, and like I said, the 300 f4. And what else did he say he got? I think he bought the 90 macro. Anyway, he's all in. So that's a third person. Then if I stop and think, I could probably think of a fourth person, or fifth person, or sixth person. And it kind of goes back to what Marco was saying: is buy the system that you enjoy, that you're going to enjoy the most and get the most use out of, all of that, and that enthusiasm and excitement and energy will spread to others, like it has around me immediately. The Gray Vanzini says, my 16 megapixel DF and my EM5 take great pics. Yes. And Adam says, MPB upgraded my XT30 to version 2 via warranty and a little extra dollars. Does anyone make leather half cases with the Arca Swiss plate integrated? Is there a go-to place for this? eBay. eBay is the best place to look. I'll tell you though, it is hard to find half leather case with Arca Swiss plate. I can't think of any off the top of my head for any camera that I own. Usually I have to pick, like with this, OM3 grip and plate, right? Versus just about every other camera I have. Like I like a Deluxe. This is a half case, but I had to put my own plate on. I was able to find a nice mini plate. It's a really small Arca Swiss compatible plate, right? You can see how small that is. I can't think of any half leather cases with an Arca Swiss on it. But eBay would be the best place to check. I've asked this before, but why don't we use the same sensor material for MFT as full frame? Just cut it whatever size you want. As far as I know, that's what they do exactly. But I don't when you say material, I assume you're talking about the wafer, the silicon wafers, those little round discs. I don't know enough about the manufacturing or fabrication of these things, but uh, yeah, they basically cut the same wafer. I think that's what they do anyway. Now I'm making a lot of assumptions that you know what I'm talking about, but there's a disc about this big, maybe it's this big, right? And and then they cut out little squares on this disc for the sensors, and each little square being an individual sensor. Hi Rob, do you leave batteries in cameras or flashes that you may not use for an extended period? I've never had a battery leak or expand, but I'm curious as to what you recommend. Best practice is not to leave the battery, right? So yeah, if it's going to be an extended period of time, I mean, to me, that would be 3 to 6 months or more. I would definitely take the battery out. I've never had a leak, as you say, but yeah, I would take them out. But I usually leave the battery in a fully charged battery. I usually leave it in a camera because I'm alternating cameras all the time, and some of my cameras, particularly the older ones, they lose the time and date. Not even my EM5 Mark III loses time and date if I don't leave a battery in it. So that's why I do it. But I do rotate enough that it's not an issue. But recommendation, best practice is, yeah, if it's going to be 3 to 6 months, I would take it out. And Adam says, I quit worrying about camera company viability years ago. Great. Upgrades like gear depreciates like cars. I use what I have now, buy other stuff when their current gear can't do what I want. Yeah, I mean, that's a very pragmatic approach, right? There's no brand loyalty. You're just buying the gear that you want at the time to do the things that you want. At RobTree, you're conflating transistor technology with processor architecture. There are many years to develop new transistor tech, but architecture are typically upgraded every 8 to 14 months. Architecture, well, no, I'm referring not to the architecture. Architecture, yeah, it does upgrade very quickly, right? What I'm talking about specifically is the actual process of fabricating the chip. Uh, so yeah, but that's definitely a very big distinction, right? Like when the Apple M chip came out, that was a big, huge architectural upgrade in terms of architecture. But the processing, say, going from 10 nanometers to 6 nanometers, right? Going to 4 nanometers, that technology takes a long time. That's what I was referring to. So actually, you stated that correctly. I did conflate. You're right. If I read your statement again, you accurately describe what I did. I was conflating transistor tech with, yeah, with architecture. But architecture is different, right? Architecture is the actual design of the circuits versus transistor tech or fabrication process of making things smaller. Okay, but what is available at the time? Okay. None of the phone manufacturers are making their processor on leading edge nodes. They can't get capacity over Apple. Right. And if I had listened to the pundits of OM was supposed to shut down a year, I bought the M10 Mark II. Yeah. Mark says the next big leap in transistor tech, I hear, is the latest generation with ribbon FETs and backside power delivery. Hmm. Not familiar with either of those. And really learning how forgiving the depth of field is with Micro Four Thirds, so much harder to focus dog about and eyes on the Fuji. Yeah, dog snout and eyes. Yep. Um, yeah, if you look at my images, I often shoot very wide, uh, with very deep depth of field. And it's just easier to do with Micro Four Thirds, you know? Like I'm looking at this image. I mean, this is a little bit low light in the background. I think this was ISO. What is this? This is ISO 8000. But yeah, the depth of field is really deep on this, right? Crazy depth of field all the way to the back. Every window and everything is in focus. Um, yeah, this is the OM3. But when I shoot with my other camera systems, yeah, I'm definitely frustrated because I have to stop down to like f16 to get the depth of field that I want. I mean, I'm always at f5.6, f8. Even on my Micro Four Thirds, I'm usually at f5.6, f8. But when I go to my other camera systems, particularly the Canon R8, I'm like, God, really? Do I got to go to f11, f16? You know, it's really it's frustrating. Gray Vanzini says, love my Sam Beige, but yeah, not much difference between the OM5 Mark II and the OM5 Mark III. Yep. I think the winning ticket to any camera personally is next gen computing inside it, though that won't sell because everyone just wants megapixels, better HD, maybe 80 megapixels handheld. I'm maybe, yeah, maybe, but I really think if they could wow us with some great computer computational stuff in the camera, people overlook the 20 megapixels, but I could be wrong. Mr. Olympus OID, hi, I've done an article asking the question if full frame is better. Prepping made me appreciate how well the OM system did to date with carefully selected and positioned products. They will do well. Okay, very good. Um, so Siegfried's ID here is the name of his blog. So if you type that in Google, that his blog will come up, and we can look at that article. There are many times in the UK when moderate ISO and shutter speed of 1/2000 will not give me a well-exposed bird photo. Therefore, often using much lower shutter speed, not for BIF, of course. Yeah, yeah. When I said birding, I generally mean birds in flight. Uh, but birding is also bird on a stick, right? Type things. Yeah, the XA5. So I have the XA3 and the XT100. Not bad, but not great either. Yeah. They're little plastic fantastics, right? It's too bad they discontinued those. Oh, the Mark Wolf is here, always late. That's okay. I would love to get Peter's new book. Okay. And my APS-C kit, 2 cams, is just a little over 1.5 pounds heavier than my own cams with some. Yeah, that's a big difference, right? Anyone here have thoughts with the Panasonic Lumix 35-100 f4 to 5.6? Been thinking about getting that due to small size and low price of $200 used would be getting it for my old reliable EM5. Okay, I have the 35-100 f2.8. If you can wing it, that's a much better lens. I think you can probably get it for 300-400. So yeah, double. I don't know what your budget is, but for about double the price, you can get a lens that's 10 times as better. So really, it's a bargain, right? The 35-100 2.8, it's a bargain. The first version. I would recommend that, but I have no experience with the F4 to 5.6. And Hiker Dude is here. Medium format discussion. Mark Denny. Yeah, Mark Denny, right? I used one for a while, but abandoned it for full frame due to limited depth of field. His video leaving medium format for his full frame cameras explains all the reasons. Yep. Yeah, I watched that one. So that's kind of what I was referring to when I talked about it earlier. That was the person. And yeah, the depth of field, the focus stacking, right? Because he did a lot of focus stacking. And Anthony says, I seriously considered moving to the Z system, but I was already heavily invested in Olympus Glass and it was too costly for me to change. Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I know a guy that did the opposite. He went from Z to OM systems. Like I said, he had the Z6 II and a 180 to 600. No matter what kit I buy, I seem to drift back to, yep, me too. And I love my Nikon, but OM is the gear I always take out. Yep. And we are at a point in history when the camera gear far exceeds the photography needs and the viewer's ability to feel renderings. What passes as good street photos is boring with no substance. Oh my God, that's so true. But Lauren is an amazing photographer, street photographer. I always enjoy. I did get your emails and I did look at your photo albums. I was gonna go back when I had some time to kind of make a few comments here and there for you, but um, uh, yeah, I've been so busy this past week. Robert Frank could make the perfect image which stands the test of time using any camera off the shelf. It is up to the viewer to see what's there. In a TikTok world, it is down to shiny things. Yeah. But like I said, we need to I just want to reiterate, I think there's two very distinct approaches to photography, right? There's people that really enjoy the technology and that gives them all the satisfaction in the world. And then photography is kind of secondary. They enjoy photography, they like taking pictures, but they like the gear. The gear is just equally as important. And then there's other groups that, you know, photography is the only thing that matters, right? The photography, and they'll use anything to take a picture. They don't care what it is, right? They have certain gear they might prefer over the other for handling, workflow, whatever reason. But their goal is the photography. And then there's hybrids, right? People that like everything. They enjoy photography, they enjoy the gear. Um, so I'm one of those. I'll talk about anything. I'll talk about gear and I'll talk about photography either way, right? And Whiplash says, I'm in the process of revamping everything, selling all things Fuji, my Nikon Z6, my Ollie 300 f4, I never take it, my OM1, G9 II, and most of my Pana lenses, getting an OM3 or an OM1 Mark II and a 100 to 400. I wish I could do that. Because I think if I really I think I can get down to two cameras, like my OM3 and my Pentax monochrome. I could get down to just those two. And if I had to pick one, it would still be the OM3 by far. But I could probably pare it down to those two cameras and be completely happy. Because I got maybe 4 lenses for the Pentax system. And then I could probably get away with 4 or 5 lenses on the OM systems. Because really, I just use the 12 to 45 most of the time in the 300 f4. Then add the 60 macro and the 8mm fisheye, and I'm done. That's all I really need to do my photography, right? But I can't let go. If you want to see something funny, let's see if I can pull it up, how quickly I can pull this up. Um, it's not coming up. Why? Ah, here it is. So, I don't know if you guys remember this video. When did I make this? Uh, 6 years ago. Why I switched to Micro Four Thirds. Ah, get through the ads. Anyway, let me just pause here for a second. I'm sitting right now in the exact same spot as I am in that video. But the big difference is, back then, all I really had was that Nikon DF and EM10 Mark II. I didn't really have too many other cameras. I had a couple of point and shoots laying around. And I didn't have that many lenses. And that was only 6 years ago. Uh, the table is, I'm sitting in the same chair. I just took the headrest off. But that table that you see there is the one I just showed you in the very beginning of this stream, where I did the measurements and things. That's the same table. Uh, so, but yeah, if I move out of the way, I got this whole rack of gear stacked, and I got this whole thing, just full of lenses. Probably, I bet there's about 40 or 50 lenses in here. And then I still have all of the gear over here. R8, OM3, Leica, EM5, and then up there is all my battery chargers. Up there are more chargers. Down there, over there, these little drawers have different cables for different things. Each drawer, lens caps, body caps, rear lens caps, and then of course my two printers. Look at the difference between these. There's nothing here. All I had was this. My Nikon D750 and my EM10 Mark II. That's all I had. And that table. Anyway, I just thought I'd when we were talking when Whiplash was talking about getting rid of all this stuff down to just, one camera. Just reminded me of that day. That video. My Olympus OMD says, Rob, I think M43 photographers underestimate the two-stop depth of field advantage they have over full frames. Talking sensors, see the trade-offs example in my latest article. Yeah, we'll definitely check that out. And good morning, Jesse. Good to see you. And Heather is here. Good morning. So Heather, I got this memory card in. The $37 256 gig V60 that Henning said got mixed reviews on reliability. But my initial testing, I'm going to use it tomorrow for birding. It's solid. It's a solid. It's a solid memory card. I'm not having any issues with it. So far, it's passed all my rudimentary tests, right? So basically, when I get a new memory card, I uh, I run Recuva to see if there's any, like if it's brand new, right? Because Recuva will probably find if there's any photos on it already. I've never opened up a brand new memory card and never found photos uh, on them, but you never know, right? It only takes a minute to check. And then I did a long format, and then I did a full read and write to the card, uh, of various files. So I filled up the card, and then I read that off of the card, formatted it, did it again, and then I did the buffer test. So for $37, it's performing as good as any other memory card I've ever used, including ones that cost 5 times as much. Now, there's no way to predict how long this card's going to last. Uh, if it's going to fail in a week or 7 years, I don't know. Time will tell. But I think for $37, uh, it's worth the risk to get that fast a card at least once. I don't know. If you're on a very tight budget, I don't see any problem with this card. Okay. I would cry if all went away. Too invested, yeah. Ooh, excuse me. It's critical to evaluate. I lost my voice. It's critical to evaluate optical and technical characteristics differently. Optical is linked to sensor size, and technical is a design issue. That's why knowing about trade offs is key. Yes. And gotta go. See you next week. Okay. Good. I'm glad you could join us. Stuart, we'll see you next week. Image quality and autofocus that I get with the M1 Mark II superior compared to my old EM1 that served me well for many years. Yep. It is an amazing camera. And Zoltan, hi, just got home. Hello, everyone. Well, hello, Zoltan. I'm glad you could join us. I'm about to wrap up here, actually. The M1 original, I could not shoot photographs over 800 ISO, causing the image quality to deteriorate substantially compared to my old Mark II. I have no problems using the 5000 ISO. Yes, there's been some substantial improvements in noise performance over the years. And Uncle Rob never aged for the past 6 years. What's the secret? Living right, man. No, you know what it is? No kids. No kids. Eat healthy and exercise. And Heather says, I'm reviewing photos I took yesterday. I saved JPEG and ORF. Reviewing photos and JPEGs are zoomed in more than ORFs. I'm not sure what your question is. Sorry, Heather, you have to rephrase that. I'm not sure what you're asking me. So you're a lightweight. I have all that plus my old film cameras, but I'm limited to one area for storage. I get talked to. Yeah. Um, yeah, and I don't even compare to Micro Four Nerds girl, Emily. She's probably got at least double, if not triple, the amount of gear I have. And good morning, Butters Gatto. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. And thanks for the card feedback. Sure, sure. Oh, thank you, thank you. Um, And Adam says, hope I'm not wearing out my welcome. Have you found any means of organizing mounting battery chargers? Oh, love a good sneeze. Glad you got that mute button. Yeah. So I went to the dollar store. This is how I organize. So nothing fancy. I went to the dollar store and I bought these tubs, right? And they stack on top of each other. That's all. And then inside, I keep all the various chargers and things in here. And then these go over. Let me click this button again. I'll move the camera up. How come it's not moving? So I'll keep these up here like this. So for example, like this one, I needed to charge the Leica Deluxe batteries. So I would take it out of one of these bins and then plug it in. And then when I'm done charging, I'll take the batteries out and put this back in that bin. And then the batteries I keep kind of haphazardly, but I keep them in this tray face up because I recognize the pins. Some of them you can't see the pins, but I keep them face up and I try to keep them together in a way that makes sense once they're charged. So I know that everything in this tray are fully charged batteries. So when I take a camera out, like if I want to take my Pentax out, I'll just grab this because I know this is my Pentax battery, and I know I'll have basically a fully charged battery. Now, if it's been more than a couple of months, the batteries particularly the older ones, they don't hold their charge as well, and I may top them off before I go, but that's basically what I do. I don't know if that was helpful at all, but so I keep everything on that shelf that's charger related, and if the first bin that I grab doesn't have the charger that I need, then I'll just grab the other one. I'll be in one of those two. Okay. Why would the same photo saved in different formats be different perspective? I still not sure I understand. The only time that would happen is if you're shooting, for example, the 8mm fisheye lens, and it automatically corrects the distortion in the JPEG, but it does not correct that distortion in the RAW. Now, if you're talking about very minor differences, that's going to be true because JPEG files get optical corrections applied in camera, whereas RAW files do not. So there will always be minor differences between the two images with respect to the actual, I guess the difference in perspective, right? There'll be a slight difference. It's most noticeable with 8mm fisheye because if you have the button set in your camera, the JPEGs will be rectilinear, but the RAW files will have that fisheye distortion. So there's a huge difference, but even normal prime lenses, there are subtle differences between the two, especially the kit lens, the zoom kit lens. If you're zoomed all the way out to 14 millimeters and you look at the raw image and you compare that to the JPEG, there's usually a pretty big difference between the two because the JPEG has been corrected in camera. So hopefully that made sense. Henning says, I'm jealous of the chargers with the changeable inlets. Cannot find some. Oh, yeah. That's been a game changer for me. And I wondered the same thing. What program are you using? Okay. I think Heather uses DxO. And Raphael says, I've been trying the OM System 90 macro with the OM1 Mark II. Okay. How do you like it? Should be pretty awesome. And it's not every photo. It was multiple It was multiple browsers and even reviewing in camera. Okay. Let me know if I answered your question though, if that made sense. If that's totally not what you were asking me, you might have to reword it again because I'm just not getting it. Raphael says, keep getting an error. It says that focus stacking error, image composite failed. So, yeah, basically, there a lot of things can make that happen, right? The most common one is you're shooting handheld and trying to stack the images, but there's some instability there in your hand holding, right? The other thing that I've noticed it can happen, but the most common one is the camera's moved. Even if you don't perceive it when you're looking at it, sometimes, hand holding is when that will happen the most. You'll get that error the most when you're hand holding. The other thing I've noticed it happens when the image is too dark or for example, the center of the image, let's say, let me use this as an example. So I'm taking a picture of a bug on the leaf. So my hand is the leaf and the bug is this penny here. And I'm taking a picture, but and then you focus stack, and it doesn't have to be a bug, it could be anything, right? But then you focus stack and you get that error. I've noticed that a lot too. And that's primarily because there's just, it's hard to explain. But it's difficult for me to explain why that's the case. I wish I could articulate this better. But it has something to do with while it's stacking, there's a little bit of focus breathing, right? And I don't have the 90 macro, but I can tell you with the 60 macro, with the combination of the problem with the focus breathing and the subject being very, very small in the frame of what you're trying to stack, I've noticed I've had a lot of problems with that, and I'll get focus stacking errors. So those are two. The third one is the lighting. It's too dark, and it's just not finding enough things in the frame because the luminance level is so low that it's not able to stack the images. Those are the three things. So the best way to focus stack really is using flash on a tripod, whether it's like I always carry a tabletop tripod with me in the field for any kind of macro work, or if I have to, I'll use my regular tripod. And that's the way I generally try to focus stack. Or you have to be really, really, if you're in the field, you need to be able to lean your arm or your body against a tree and be extremely, extremely stable if you're going to handhold focus stacking. Because the slightest motion will cause errors. I mean, I've gotten away with just, hand holding like this without trying to do all these things to brace and be steady. But if you ever see me in the field, you'll always notice that I'll always have, like if I'm doing any kind of photography, I'm always very conscious of being stable, right? I'll have my feet spread, or if I'm down on the ground, I'll always have at least one knee on the ground. And I always have my elbows tucked, except, all of the techniques that you would use to be stable. Because that's the most common reason it won't stack is because there's too much motion or there's focused breathing in the way the subjects just don't line up right, particularly when the thing you want to take a picture of is very small. It has trouble with all the other elements for some reason, or the element in the center. But it's not fine, or it's too dark, or too bright. But typically when it's too dark. So use flash. Eat your soup. Yep, I will. Jesse says, oh, sorry, that's not for me. I'm going to email you an example. Okay, that would be better. Yep. And Lauren says, Rob, thanks for the live chat, but I have to run. You and Ellie have a great week. Okay, thank you, Lauren, for dropping in. Do you reformat your SD cards each time after offloading and backing up your images on it? So my workflow is, if it's a single card slot like the OM3, yeah, I almost always reformat before every shoot. Ideally, I like to have my photos backed up on my computer twice, right? So I have it on my main drive, my working drive, and then I also have a duplicate on the backup drive, right? So I have two copies of the photo on my computer. That's the ideal workflow. And then I'll reformat the card before my next shoot. In practice, for one card slot cameras, I'll do a backup, every couple of weeks. So if my computer crashes within that 2 or 3 week window that I didn't do a full backup to another hard drive, I could potentially lose all the pictures because I've already probably formatted my card again. And that could be a problem. It's never been a problem, but there's always that one, it only takes one time, right? Best practice would be make sure everything is backed up on your computer, meaning on your main working drive and also on your backup drive and or cloud or whatever your backup, methodology is. For single card slot. For double card slot, like my OM1, I have two 256 gig cards in them. And I never take out the second card or format it. I take out card slot number 1, offload those images into, okay, let me back up. Okay, for double card slot cameras, I have two 256 gig cards, right? Which is good for like 10,000 images each, at least. So what I'll do is I'll format both cards, okay? Let's say this is a brand new camera. I'll format both cards, and then I'll set the camera to write to both cards simultaneously, RAW and RAW, right? Or RAW and JPEG and RAW and JPEG. But they're going to be identical, duplicates of each other. And then when I get home, I take out card slot number 1, offload to my computer, and then I put it back in. But this time, on my second photo shoot, I only format card slot number 1. Card slot number 2, I leave it. And then I rinse and repeat. After I'm done with my second photo shoot, I take the card out, offload to my computer, and then put this back in. So even if anything happens to my laptop, my computer, I still have all my photos on card slot number 2. So card slot number 2 is my backup. Now, hopefully within a 2 or 3 week window, when I do the backups on my computer to the backup drive, then eventually when this card gets full, I can format I can format the second card. Because this eventually gets full, and it has. So that's how I do it. So let me see. I probably formatted both cards because it's been a while. But let me see what's on here now. Yeah, I formatted both on my last photo shoot. Because it probably been 3 or 4 months since I used this camera. And in the last 3 or 4 months, I know I've backed up everything that this camera has taken. But, when I look at the super control panel, if you look at the bottom, you can see raw plus raw, card slot 1, card slot 2, how many shots are left on each one. So I know when I'm getting close to filling up card slot number 2, and then I'll back up on my computer, then I can format it if I need to. So you've been using the Godox IT32 flash and handheld. Okay, so with the Godox IT32, are you getting any black frames? Because I've noticed that flash misfires in focus stacking, and that will also cause focus stacking to fail. So let's say you're doing 15 frames in focus stacking. If 3 or 4 of those, the flash misfired, then it's not going to focus stack, right? So that would be the other reason. Let's see. How do you store lenses? Since I live in a moisture-rich Atlanta, I'm worried. Oh, I have it right here behind me. The Rugard dry box. I think they're going to go on sale soon over at B&H. When they go on sale, they used to be really, really huge sales. But let me see if I can find it for you. So this is the one that I have, the 80 liter. I'll put a link in the description, but I think I paid $125 for it. It was 50% off. And it goes on sale almost every January. I haven't seen it on sale yet for January. It was on sale for like Black Friday. It was $149 on Black Friday. But it should go on sale for $149 again this month. It's happened every January since I've been in photography. Okay, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but if it doesn't happen by the end of the month, then you're just gonna have to pay whatever the price is, or wait for Black Friday. But that's the one that I have. Oh, and I also, boy, what time? How long have I been online? I don't know, 3 hours. Holy crap! I gotta go. Man, no wonder everybody's dropping out like flies. Uh, so Raphael, I think that might be the problem. Is the IT32 is going to misfire. That's my best guess. So after you do your stacking, go back and review the 15 images that it took and see if there's any black frames in there, and that's most likely the cause. So I think I'm going to call it here. I don't see any more things in the chat. And I got to go. I have a party to go to today. But you guys, thanks so much for joining me today. It's great conversation. Hopefully I was able to help some of you, and uh, I will be back Tuesday for some shopping. And I'll also have, by that time, Heather, I'll have used the SD card that I bought in the real world, right? Birding, where I'm flushing the buffer to it constantly, right? Because I'll probably get about 4 or 5,000 images on tomorrow when I go out, and we'll see how it performs in real life. So far, right here on my desk, it's been performing well. But anyway, we'll be back on Tuesday. Also, my photo editing streams on Friday, and then every Sunday I try to do the open Q&A like this. So, and oh my God, I just saw this pop up. Thank you, Darren. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. So we're here until the very end. Okay, but you guys have a great rest of your weekend, a great week, and a good life. Eat healthy, exercise, and I hope to see you guys all again soon.